Get underway because we've got only an hour for this session on where are you going, Central Europe, and we've got lunch immediately after that. So we've got a hard stop in an hour. We're still missing one of our panelists. I hope she'll join us here in a minute, but my strict instructions were to start no matter whether you're still missing panelists or not. So I'm Jamie Fly. I'm a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute in Washington. I guess I'm clearly not Central European, but the main reason I was asked to moderate this is I spent some time here in Prague over about 4 years up until 2023 as president and CEO of Radio Free Europe. Radio Liberty spent a lot of time traveling around the region and led RFE's efforts at the time actually to return to Central Europe, which I think is a statement about some of the challenges the region's been facing when it comes to media freedom and democracy in recent years. So great to be with all of you and great to be with our panelists. We hope to be joined momentarily by Iveta Radičová, who's former Prime Minister of Slovakia and can talk to us about what's going on there. Seated to her left is Saša Vondra, who's a member of the European Parliament, a member of the Board of Directors of the Forum 2000 Foundation. Next to Saša is Caitlin Cseh, who's a member of the Committee on European Affairs in the Hungarian National Assembly, previously served in the European Parliament. And then rounding us out is Macha Rucaj, who's a senior fellow at the Prague Center for Transatlantic Relations and can talk to us about the Polish perspective. So I think you've seen the framing of this panel. We're going to talk about the region broadly as a group, but then also I think initially I wanted to drill down into what is the state of democracy in each of the countries represented on this panel, and then we'll pull in some other themes as well. I thought since we're sitting here at Forum 2000, we're sitting here in Prague, we just had the Czech elections, we've got government coalition formation underway and in the media, that I'd first start with Saša, maybe just to give us a sense of where's Czechia going. How concerned should the attendees of Forum 2000 be about the future Czech government and what the return of Babiš means for Czech democracy and also Czech leadership in this region? So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Saša.
Okay, thank you very much. So, hello, good morning. I would start with two theses. One, more broadly on Central Europe, because its title is Quo Vadis. So I think this, picture or image of Central Europe, which is being painted by many Western media, that this is kind of a black box or shithole of Europe, I think it's not fair. It's not fair in reality. Namely, if you see the development in the major players in Europe, take France. The politics is on the verge of collapse. Macron is a lame duck. Economy is on the brink, even, changing the rating of the country. If you see the Spanish politics right now, opposing, spending more for NATO, trying, to destroy the peace in the Middle East. If you see United Kingdom, the cradle of democracy, with totally reshaping the political map in the next elections. So just to name a few. So I think to put the painting of Central Europe as a kind of really of the hell does not correspond to reality. Thesis to Czech Republic. We are working democracy. And just last example are those elections. There were many speculation is going, to repeat something what's happened in Romania. To disqualify somebody or even to cancel the elections. No way, Yes, there were some debates, but the constitutional system is strong. the courts are, the justice system is strong. So both Constitutional Court and the highest, the Supreme Administrative Court, which are in the process, so they simply act in a very civilized manner. And thus, I can be dissatisfied with the result of the elections, because the world, in which Andrej Babiš is living, like the world of Robert Fico is living, is entirely different world than is mine. So we were defeated, but that's a democracy. And so I don't have a single doubt about the future of democracy in my country. And I'm pretty confident, and was also confident when Babiš was assuming the power for the first time with all those conflicts of interest, which is gigantic, and has to be somehow solved in future, because now it's the legal obstacles to assume the power with this conflict of interest are even stronger than in the past. But when we had this debate 10 years ago, I simply said and even wrote that the constitutional system which we have established here in the country right after 1989 is strong enough to protect itself against any kind of a conqueror of the Babiš or from Babiš or elsewhere. So don't have any doubt about democracy in my country. Mm-hmm. And certainly, what we can expect in future here, I think less value-based politics, which you could enjoy from the outgoing government, more tendency towards realpolitik, towards transactional concept of policy making, more, let's say, business-like attitude. But Babiš himself would have certainly interest not to be taken as a kind of a shithole of in Europe. He does not have any business in Russia. He has a business in Germany. One of the largest factories is near Wittenberg. He has a business in France. So he is not interested to be taken as a persona non grata. And even more, in the business, he's a very tough negotiator. He's a kind of a carnivore who's eliminating the competition around himself in the business. Something similar he's trying to do in the politics, and that's wrong. For example, he eliminated the social democrats outside of the political map, simply eating of their electorate. They lost the electorate. First, they lost their representative, then they lost the electorate, and now with the attempt to join with the communists, they even lost the trademark. So they are finished for many years to go. So yes, that's the role of Babiš, but those who are afraid that he's going to play the big game, in the European politics, tough negotiator, those who have some experience with Viktor Orban, or don't be afraid. Outside of this country, he will make some performance of fighting for domestic audience, but then after 2 days he will give up. Yeah. So I don't have major concerns here. Yes, there are some extremists circulating around, in particular SPD. Yeah. But I think they will not influence the government in a way that it would, there was a very tough political campaigning right before the election. So, it's a choice west or east. It was also managed by the coalition, by the parties of the outgoing coalition, because, you know, the government had to pay the price for the inflation, in particular for the high energy prices as a result of the war and the Green Deal. And thus, a substantial part of the voters of the government coalition parties were somehow dissatisfied with the performance. And thus, those parties had to mobilize their voters just simply to stand and to go to vote. And the instrument for the mobilization was this East-West dilemma. Somehow it worked, because at the end of the day, in the elections, those parties got the same number of the votes as 4 years ago. But paradoxically, it also worked on the other side, because, you know, maybe 5% of the people here loves Russia. The rest don't like Russians. Maybe this is a bit different with Slovakia. So those who were intending to vote either SPD or this communist renames to this formation enough, they at the last minute decided not to vote for them, but to vote Babiš. Exactly because, you know, the ordinary people don't understand the details of the politics, but for sure they are not interested that the country would be retaken by the Russians or would leave, you know, NATO or the European Union. So just don't be confused with the campaigning. I think the country will stay where it is, and the EU only can kill itself by mismanagement. That's the different story. Expect less value-based policy making, more cynicism, more pragmatism, something what, you know, I do not like, but they won. So that's my summary.
Good. It's good to start on a note of optimism. Macha, I'll turn to you next, and then I'll let Iveta get up to speed with the discussion and then bring her in after you. But Macha, do you share Sasha's optimism when it comes to Poland, where obviously there's also been some resilience in Polish democracy? We now have divided government of sorts in Warsaw. But the interesting thing for me that I've watched is Polish foreign policy doesn't seem to have been affected as much by these different political trends and even some of the kind of counter-democratic forces. So interested to hear your take on what's going on in Warsaw.
Well, I definitely share Sasha's diagnosis of, or at least a kind of rejection of this stigmatizing Central Europe as something different than the rest of the continent. The processes that are happening in our societies, kind of reconfiguration of political spectrum and clashes between, let's say, more liberal and more democratic perspective on how to organize the political system are just the same. We are part of the West also in this sense, that the political processes and the social processes are more or less similar in all over the Western countries. That's point number one. As to Poland, it's quite rare in Poland to perceive the amount of continuity in Polish foreign policy. You need to look from outside to understand this. And when you talk to the Poles and say that there is this continuity, they are quite a kind of surprised by this discovery. But it is true in terms of kind of priorities and paradigms of thinking about international affairs. There is really almost no change between the former and the present government. There are probably some different accents, but the substance stays the same. This kind of straightforward and clearly defined foreign policy priorities are one part of the picture, and the other is what I would call a kind of destructive internal struggle, which so far hasn't affected too much those foreign policy priorities and formulation of national interest on international scene, but it is a constant threat that this internal struggle would spill over also to this international performance of Poland, and it will have kind of debilitating effect on Polish on functioning of the Polish state, especially if you take the problems with the justice system, which is in a terrible mess right now. This being said, I would add that this tension between clearly defined foreign policy priorities and internal struggle might be dangerous in a situation we are living now, which means a complete redefinition of the international scene and a situation when you need to act fast and you need to be creative, let's put it this way, because some of those priorities, for example, being at the same time an integral part of the European core and at the same time having a special bilateral relations with the United States, might be put into doubt or put into at least a kind of a test. And at that moment, this internal polarization of Polish politics might be harmful. But so far, Poland is doing quite well.
Great. Iveta, turning to you, I asked Sasha previously, and we just heard about where Poland and Czechia are headed. So I just want to know where Slovakia headed. And the reason I wanted to structure it this way, kind of moving on a spectrum. So as we turn to Slovakia, right before Hungary, obviously Slovakia and Hungary are the countries in the region that have, with recent political developments, been moving in a different direction. That where the concerns about deterioration of democracy have been greater than Czechia and Poland. And so I guess wrapped up into that question about where Slovakia is headed is what's happening underneath the surface as well. What's the potential for Slovakia to move back in a more democratic direction, and also then on the foreign policy front to kind of return to the fold more of the traditional Central European norm, more skeptical of Russia, more skeptical of China, than what we've seen of the recent Fico government.
Thank you very much. I apologize for a few minutes to be late. I had one bilateral meeting, so sorry. I have to divided answer, and I would try to be really brief, to two major dimensions. There are deep geopolitical changes globally. We have discussed these days, these shifts and changes, and all these changes have had impact on each country. Some global changes with deeper, some with less deeper consequences. Depends on overall, not only political, but mainly economical situation. This I would like to stress. So if we were faced this millennium, several global crises with consequences and synergy effect of this crisis, then different countries have really different means and different possibilities how to solve these new challenges. This is first very important moment. So then you will find more similarities in between South Europe and Central Europe than in between East and West Europe. When we talk about effects of global changes. For me, there is another dimension which is crucial, so economic and global effects. Second, rapid dynamic change from industrial societies to technological societies and informative societies, once more with different influence and different consequences. Some countries are more open and prepared to digitalized economy, to new supermarket of informations, and to shift or struggle, new struggle, in between two paradigms concerning informative society. On one side, truth based on verified facts versus truth based on constructs. The premise, truth based on constructs, is the basis of all populist movements all around the world. Third, momentum and influence is, sorry, yes, cleavages based on identity. So global, European, national, regional self-identity. And these struggles are once more used by different political parties with different offers and creating new demands at the political sphere. So, to conclude, Slovakia has survived 4 deep economic recessions. 4. 2 internal, beginning of 90s and of 90s, resulted in deepest and highest reform process. You know it with the label Tiger of Europe. We have done unbelievable jump in that time, with the result as a member state of EU, NATO, OECD and Eurozone in comparison with other countries. So really jump. Then 2 next recession, which were external. Financial crisis, I can illustrate from the case of Slovakia, 8.2% of deficit, increasing debt, 15% rate of unemployment, and really problems to keep employment rate in the country. Okay, we have solved it somehow. Today, once more, external recession because of energy crisis, pandemic, and war in Ukraine. As there is cleavage on identity, there is a polarized society concerning attitudes and preferences, how to react on these new uncertainties. We can call it complex of uncertainties. If liberal Democrats are offering the solutions based on 3 major pillars, property rights, political rights, and civic rights, today coalition stress property rights and political rights, point. So more oriented people to voting democracy than liberal democracy. And step by step, people are more and more prepared to do some shortages and rejections of civic rights if they have guaranteed property rights and political rights. This is used by very pragmatic politicians at this moment, Premier Fico, his 4th time at his position. And do not please forget that inside all this complex picture, there were several tragedies with deep influences on political preferences, not only murder of media journalists, Mr. Kuciak and her partner. It was a real tragedy in the country, but also the murder of two representatives on the street of LGBT community, and last but not least, shooting attack on Prime Minister himself. So my question is, if it's surprising, if the society is polarized with such high level of fear, hate, and very aggressive politics. So political leaders are really creating the atmosphere of very arrogant, vulgar, non-human type of politics. And this new kind of politics is visible around the whole world. So for me, that part of, not small part, but half of the population applauded to this kind of politics with the offer of simply easy populist solution very far from reality is surprisingly not new phenomena. Yes, there is alternative, and I will conclude. Alternative is such strong as weak is coalition, or opposite. As the coalition is really strong, with strong support in the population, and alternative is divided and quarreling all the time, then if you look at the last public opinion researches, only 35 to 40% of population believe that there is real democratic alternative to present coalition. In other words, the gap in between coalition and part of opposition is lower than the cleavages among democratic opposition parties. And this is the problem. Last example, the change in our constitution, which was openly for me shock, because it's totally against the guarantee of minority rights. And no doubt that it's a new division in the country. You can applaud to this change. Half of population is totally dissatisfied and do not agree at all. So one small new line of polarization because of this change. I am really tolerant person, but I would kindly ask not to order me what I have to do in my private life. And here is the major problem. And the step was done. So this is the picture. I can say that several times we were down and top and down and top. It's the cycle like it is in democratic regimes everywhere. And always you can interpret the same situation in two ways. If there is a half of water in the bottle, for me it's half full of democratic attempts. For some skeptics, it's half empty. And the situation is not very, very well and very good. Still there is a chance.
So, Caitlin, I saved Hungary for last, so we'll turn to you. And same question, where is Hungary headed, given the outsized influence that Orban has had in Brussels and on the European debate about the future of the EU, on Ukraine, on even China policy, and then as an American on conservatism in the US, which has been astonishing to me to watch, is how much Hungary is held up as a model for some of those around Trump. I'm not sure Trump himself really thinks of it that way, but for American conservatives now, what's going on beneath the surface in Budapest?
Ooh, where is Hungary headed? I wish I knew. I mean, seriously, this is the question everybody is asking themselves these days. We have an election coming up in April, as you might know, and I would say with full certainty that now there is a real chance that Orban and his party could lose this election. It would not be easy. It will be a very, very difficult campaign with a lot of disinformation, propaganda, AI-powered manipulation. We already see that, but there is a real chance of him losing and a different party winning. Having said that, I would also caution everybody against hoping that if there is a change, if Orban is gone, then the entire situation is solved. Then Hungary is back to peace. Hungary will be Sweden, and it will be all right. It won't be the case. For a number of reasons. First of all, just very briefly, as you all know, Hungary, under the prime ministership of Mr. Orban, has undergone a state of extreme democratic deterioration. The institutions are captured, and unless a very high majority is reached in the polls, it will be very difficult to work with the existing institutional structure, and it will be a very big difficulty coupled with economic challenges that a potential new government would face. Also, the polarization of the society is still there. I think it's very hard to underestimate the impact of 15 years of illiberal governance can do to not only to the soul of the society, but to the media landscape, about the narratives, about dependencies also to other actors. So I think if a new government comes in, this will be a certainly more European trajectory, a more cooperative way of doing politics, but destroying democracy is always easier than building it back. And the third thing I want to raise, if there is a change in Hungary, I also hope that those in the European institutions or in other capitals who worried about the deterioration of rights and values will not lean back and say that, like, okay, this was a Hungary problem and it's gone and we are all good. We are not all good. So this backsliding happened in a context where a member of the European Union was allowed to trample on these rights and to destroy these institutions. And also it exposed our strategic vulnerabilities as a union when one stooge of Vladimir Putin can block our core foreign policy decisions. And if we are not aware, and if we do not take reforms, and we can debate what these reforms are, and we might have very different perceptions on how to make the union work. In my opinion, the veto system is an open door for that, but you might disagree. But if it is not fixed in a way, then we will see more and more Orbans popping up, not only in the region, all around the continent. If Mr. Orban wins, then it will also be a hard time for Europe and the region. It's very clear that he has given up on making the anti-corruption reforms that could unlock the blocked European money for him. And I think in return, he intends to play hardball when it comes to the budget negotiations, when it comes to the membership of Ukraine, or other foreign policy decisions. So there will be a very long stretch of blackmailing and vetoing in order to try to get back some money in other forms. And as we are discussing the V4 and Central Europe, this could be very decisive also for where the V4 is headed, for instance. You mentioned the US, and I will shortly refer to that, but the V4 as it stands, or where is it headed, I'm afraid that it is headed to a direction of being a Central European CPAC. So like a platform where they make big declarations and talk about political issues, political posturing, but not like a real platform of leverage or negotiation. And I agree with you, Mr. Vondra, that the Central Europe is not as bad as its image right now. However, if this image persists, then it will make it very difficult for us to negotiate as a bloc, even if our interests align. For real and serious negotiations on key issues, many of the countries will seek different formats, as they have already done so far. In regards to the US, I honestly not sure about how Mr. Orban can imagine that he stays friends with Mr. Trump and in the same time acts as the backdoor of China to the European Union. Because there is a very superficial level of alignment on migration issues, anti-LGBTQ policies, minority rights, but on the core directions of security, of development, what Mr. Orban follows and what Mr. Trump follows are like very divergent paths. All in all, I think the region and Hungary is at a crossroads, and it also comes with opportunities in a reformed security architecture. We, for instance, could act as a driver of this reform, of this change, building on our existing capacities and our historic knowledge of what it means to be in this region. We could be the new innovation hub. We could do a lot of things. But for this, there is also, and this is where I want to close, or also reflection is needed on how democracy and the EU has delivered for the citizens. Because we were promised a lot of things when we were on the track of membership. Prosperity, we will live like the Austrians, everything will be amazing from the next day. It wasn't. We were overpromised and underdelivered. And if the new reforms of the EU, no matter if it is the Green Deal, security reform, or any economic decisions that are happening are not taken with social policies in mind, then this populist rift will grow. It did not come from nowhere. It did not only come from Russia. It came from a very, in my opinion, profound dissatisfaction within our societies, where easy answers responded to very rightly. But as a response, we cannot only say from the center that we will restore democracy if we cannot pair it with real and tangible results to be delivered in people's lives. And this is also a job we have to do, apart from winning elections, apart from making laws and restoring institutions. We have to deliver for the citizens.
Great. Picking up on that point, I'd like to come back to each of you to tease out some practical recommendations for supporters of democracy, be it in Brussels, Washington, EU member states, who care about the region, who want the region to succeed and thrive. What are the tangible things that supporters of democracy should be doing to both strengthen help democracy strengthen here in the region, but also make sure the region is prosperous, as Caitlin was describing? I asked this because just running an American institution, Radio Free Europe, that was getting more involved back in this region, seeing some debates with the EU, which I think Caitlin aptly described. The EU often, especially with Hungary, been completely all over the place about how to deal with Orban. And when various international democratic institutions do invest in the region, there's often backlash and then claims of malign interference and meddling, which officials like Orban use to their advantage domestically. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty. And now you've seen U.S. policy obviously go in the opposite direction, which is, well, we're just not going to get involved. We're actually not going to get involved in the future of Hungarian democracy or the future of Czech democracy or Slovak democracy. It's not our problem. So I think there's a real desire to understand what are the practical, effective ways to engage that are not counterproductive. And so I'll come back to each of you with that question. And the organizers also asked us to be very, very succinct and very clear about tangible recommendations. So I turn to you first, Sasha.
I think many of you were speaking about the polarization of the politics and that how it's able to to kill the democracy, because the both camps of the polarization are accusing the other camp that they are a fatal threat to democracy. And here, the model example, we can see this in the US. You had some actions, with this progressive agenda overtaking the universities and all that. It was simply too much. And it was influencing even of the freedom of expression. And we all know those cases. This concept of DA, this European ESG, it's not true that it's just a private issue of every individual citizens. The concept of ESG, for example, I remember when the Czech Prime Minister was receiving the letter undersigned by multinational corporation that immediately we should allow the gay marriages. What does this mean? They are writing the letters to make a score in ESG, to have the better access to the credits or the insurance in the banks. And this is something, what is a product of the political and legislative agenda. And if this is spreading, then you get the counter-reaction. That's what we can see in the US, the counter-reaction to this, which, from one extreme to another. And this democracy, this is in between, it's a constant dialogue. But the dialogue, you need just not to tell your truth, you need to have an ability to listen to the others. And if this is not the case, then we are digging a hole which really can destroy democracy. Yeah? And I think, my recommendation is just to put the leg from the pedal of this cars driving, to on one hand to this paradise of the progressive society, because there are the others who do not like this intrusion of those, so-called values into our family life and so on. The same is with this ultra-green agenda, which just the only result is that Europe is losing the competitiveness because the Chinese, Americans, Indians, they are just smiling to us, that we are shooting into our own leg, making our economically weaker. So I would expect much more rationality, ability, to listen, to react. The radicalism, even, if it is explained as the road to paradise. This is, from my experience, what does mean the communists were promising, the early communists, they were promising the paradise on the earth, so global intention, but they paved us into the hell. So here, my recommendation is to calm down.
I think calming down is always a good recommendation. Macho, what has worked in Poland, or what have you seen not work that we should learn from in terms of external pressure on Polish democracy, which you had various US policies under the Biden administration, you had pressure from Brussels, some of it provoked a domestic reaction, but what are your reflections?
What do you mean by, can you specify the question?
Look on the media law that the Biden administration really weighed in on to try to preserve independent media in Poland. Again, Poland's in a different situation, but those who want to support Polish democracy from abroad, what's the best way to do that?
I'm not sure if supporting Polish democracy from abroad is really necessary. I think it would make more problems than help, as it does, as it did in recent years. For example, the highest amount of distrust of the Poles towards the European Union, which is perceptible nowadays. Poland used to be a most Euro-enthusiastic society in European Union. Now the numbers are really falling down, which is to a great extent a result of double standards applied by the European Commission and the blatant hypocrisy in dealing with one and the other government, I mean the previous one and the current one. So I mean, the less external pressure, the better. I would say. And in the first question, I told you that Poland is doing okay and will manage. So that's probably the proper answer. Nowadays, we have a tendency to build kind of international blocks. Turning European and Western politics into a kind of apocalyptic struggle between good and evil. Unfortunately, both camps claim that they represent the good, of course, which is really harmful, and it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, from this perspective, I would say really calming down and going back to the reality on the ground would be really useful, and acknowledging the fact that we do not have the good fighting the evil, but actually two camps or two tribes trying to turn our societies in one or the other direction.
So Iveta, we've got 2 votes for calming down. It sounds like, do you agree that the key is just calming down, or are there tangible things that supporters of the region who are external to the region should do to support democracy?
I will try to answer in 2 directions. One is procedural dimension of democracy and another institutional. I cannot mix it. Procedural meant that what we can do more, meant that we really will guarantee what we have promised. Mm-hmm. And we have promised a human rights approach. This we have promised. If we mean it seriously, it means that we have promised to guarantee procedurally equality concerning the law, a legal state, justice, and non-corruption procedures, anti-corruption procedures. We didn't fulfill this promise. We are neither near to these promises. So what we have to do is to improve democratic institutions responsible for guarantees of human rights and non-discrimination in our countries. In other words, to decrease the mass of people who are excluded and really include them to the society. And I do not have in my mind the only one dimension of this issue. It means sexual or gender, not at all. For me, the crucial point of view is based on inclusion on the market, inside society, and to the families. So all 3 pillars. And concerning institutional situation, we are facing a really attack on new kind of social inequalities in our countries, and have to have in our minds that people many times justify them as non-justice. So not based on real results of our activities, our jobs, our professional qualifications. Therefore, concretely, if there are institutions based on last century and not reacting to the new dynamics and demand of new kind of institutions in 21st century, the institutions will stay weak to solve the problems. Very good example is European Union, institution with very good aims, basis, but not adequately reacting to the changes, rapid dynamic changes in the world. There is not only timing gap, but also the gap concerning concrete answers to new problems we are facing. Next, concretely, only you can have a responsible citizen, which is condition for democracy, when he's adequately informed. Without adequate information, you cannot expect adequate responsible citizen. What we can do concerning whole media space, as is a real mixture of what you wish and algorithms are now really ruling our decision-making procedures. So we are not using them only as source of information, but they are deciding our way of lives. I do not want to open complicated issue how to guarantee verified information, because it's very sensitive concerning censorship. But it's time to give the answer. And last but not least, why people elect leaders who are step by step, slowly cutting their rights. And they are giving them the power. If I give the simple answer, I'll be wrong. So I only open the discussion to find the answer to this issue. And one way how to answer it is that first, how the citizens understand what does democracy really mean, what they value as inevitable part of democracy, if it's only voting right and free elections, then they are very open to reject other rights, step by step, especially if the procedure is slowly. And last but not least, they need security point. So many times their decision is, okay, I know all the negative features of this leader, but I know what he will do. He is predictable. And they prefer this predictable part of elections in comparison with unknown and repeating the word, the change and reform is needed. This is something which will really push the voters from such leaders because are overoccupied by this pressure on them. So many things we can do. I'm not so sure we are really doing them. And last but not least, not to open the space for ideological fights. It's the end of discussion. So what I really try to do all my life is to strictly distinguish, sorry, this is ideology, forget it. Try to solve the problem of the people who feel not included, very uncomfortable in our countries, and who feel that they are not the first-class citizens, but second, third, fourth. This is the worst result of democratic procedure.
Caitlin, anything you want to add to the list? So I don't think Iveta is in the calm down camp entirely, so we're a bit divided on the panel, but interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so what should those do who are worried about democracy? There were some votes for calming down. I would rather say wake up, because this is not an isolated problem of a single country in Central Europe. This is not something that happens far away. This can happen anywhere. You have to safeguard your democracy, even though if you think it's safe. Come to Hungary, talk with our NGOs, learn from our mistakes, learn from our examples. It's so easy to lose the thread when backsliding starts, because it sneaks in and you don't notice and people don't care. And when it is visible, then it's already very, very bad for a lot of people and very hard to do it back to the state where we started from. Take it seriously. If you are an institution, if you work in the Commission, what you can do, keep the laws. There are a lot of European laws that are just taken as optional or a basis for political negotiation. You shouldn't do that. You should guarantee the equality and the respect of every single European citizen through European laws. If people steal money, don't give them more money without providing guarantees. If European citizens' rights are trampled upon in any European country, you have to be there as a union to protect them. I cannot accept, for instance, that women's rights are treated optional in the EU, that you can opt out from providing reproductive health care. We need to make changes in the EU so that we can really make our citizens equal. It's not okay that in certain countries women die from abortion, die because of the lack of abortion care. It's not okay that in some countries 2 men and a child is considered to be a family, but if they move to another EU country, they are not. If we do not get these social rights on the same basis, we cannot speak about a union of equality. And this is absolutely fundamentally important, in my opinion. If you care about free elections, invest in media. Invest in funds where independent media can get support from if they are trying to be silenced back home. And where I want to close down, we also have to learn from the populist side, because they are so good in coordinating. They just share their advisors, their experiences. There is this whole infrastructure that connects the bad guys together. And we, the good guys, are sometimes meet and we have these like very ideological, high-flying conversation. But we have to coordinate more, because the attack on our democracies is happening globally. It will happen in countries where you cannot even imagine that it can take place. So we need to step up and we need to wake up, because we are in trouble. We need to deliver for the citizens with reforms, with laws, and with social policies that work for everybody. Otherwise, the alternative is, I don't think that's good. I'm not talking about, of course, interfering from the outside. Every single country has to solve its own problems via its own election, by its own parties. But it does not mean that the EU, for instance, should throw its hands up if European citizens' rights are violated, or if the basis of the values the Union was founded upon is trampled on. This is not an individual problem. This is the problem of us as society, globally, when we fight this transition of a new world order. And if we cannot preserve democracy within our community, then how can we claim to protect it from outside actors?
Thank you. We're at time. Otherwise, I'd call on Randy. I'd encourage Randy or others to seek out the speakers, but I don't want to keep you from lunch. We covered a lot of territory. The things that jumped out at me, we need to be careful, even as we describe what's going on in the region. We don't denigrate the region. To Sasha's initial comment, that this is a vibrant region. Others talked about the potential for innovation, so I think we can't forget that. A lot of this is about economic crises that our societies in the region and elsewhere have gone through, that the populists are exploiting. And then several speakers just highlighted the long-term challenges of a lot of promises made that have not been delivered to citizens that people are responding to. When it came to practical solutions, I think the panel was divided, as we heard, and we had the calm down caucus and then the wake up caucus. So I'll let people decide where they land on that. But please join me in thanking our speakers for an interesting conversation.